Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So today, I'm not going to give anything close to some exhaustive treatment, but let's just introduce the idea of verb forms. So this is a long time coming for two reasons. One, I've given you the etymological tree diagram of how verbs are formed. And almost immediately we see that, well, not every verb is fa'ala, that you have other forms of the verb. Secondly, perhaps more importantly, if you have been studying Arabic in the meantime, if you've been reading the Quran, you will have seen that there are many, many different ways words or verbs come up. You will have seen forms like, ittaqa, for example, muttaqun. What is ittaqa? It's not fa'ala. What are the root letters of ittaqa? It's not immediately clear to us. You might have seen amana, iman, such a basic verb. But what is iman? What does amana, yu'minu? Why is it yu'minu? It should be yaf'alu. What's going on here? So for that reason, verb forms are very important to learn. I think that, well, first we are still mastering the basic verbs. So I don't like us to um I mean, learn verb forms too thoroughly just now, but very soon we will learn them. And I find the best way to learn the different forms of the verb is through examples, through actually learning your vocabulary. So we're not doing that at the moment. For that reason, this is merely an introduction to the idea of verb forms. As for what, for example, tafa'ala, what's going on there with tafa'ala? How will you learn this? How will you learn all these different verb forms? By just learning lots of Arabic vocabulary, and more than that, experiencing and tasting Arabic. Remember, we have the verb ذوق or تذوق. We want to taste and feel and delight in the splendor of the Arabic language. So to actually learn the meanings of these verb forms, which is the path towards real deep mastery of the Arabic language. To do that, we just need to dive into as much Arabic as we can. For now, let's give you the introduction. So fa'ala yaf'alu. We've seen this. We've been playing around with this all the time. And you might rightfully say, well, look, this doesn't even make up 10%, 20% of the verbs I see. Not everything is fa'ala. There's other things. You may have seen that. Well, it's not always fa'ala. Sometimes it's, for example, sami'a, to hear, sami'a. It's not fa'ala, it's fa'ila. Or alima, to know. Again, alima. It's not alama, alima. So what's going on here? So essentially, yes, there's three things which can happen. It can be fa'ala, the one we are used to. It can be fa'ila or fa'ula. So you don't really need to master this or rather memorize this because it will again come through experience. But just for your notice, just for your curiosity, fa'ala yaf'alu. It can be yaf'alu, yaf'ilu, or yaf'ulu. For example, fataha, yaftahu, to open. ضرب يضرب, to hit. نصر ينصر, to help. You see, it can be the imperfect, your mudari' can be a or e. Then there are two other ones, like sami'a yasma'u, alima ya'lamu, amila ya'malu. What did I say? Alima ya'lamu. Um, this, I've called it the ergative. The idea of fa'ila is that it's an activity which is more internal. For example, daraba, it's something external to me, right? The fa'ila, the e here is connoting a verb which pertains to my internal state. Samra, hearing, exists inside of me, regardless of whether I'm hearing now or not. The idea of hearing, the capacity to hear, the important word here, the potential to hear is innate inside of me. It is just that at certain times I will actually hear. So this form, فَعِلَ يَفْعَلُ, is about something potential actually occurring. Hence, سَمِعَ يَسْمَعُ, to hear. عَلِمَ يَعْلَمُ, to know. عَمِلَ يَعْمَلُ, to work. عَمَلْ عِلْمْ سَمْعُ. All these things are internal possible states or capacities, powers which I have. One level even deeper, فَعُولَ يَفْعُلُ, is something even deeper. It pertains to the actual state of my being. For example, حَسُنَ يَحْسُنُ حُسْنًا. Al-husn is beauty. Hasuna means to be or to become beautiful, to be hasan. So something even more deep than just samr. Hearing is still a potential thing I can do. But to be beautiful, that pertains to the essence of what the thing is. So you have this hierarchy of external actions, internal possible actions, and internal states. And that's what these possibilities are basically doing. But again, how are you actually going to learn this and remember this? Through experience and just by learning hundreds and thousands of verbs. That's how you're going to master this. Do you remember the middle voice? Pause this and revise that because I have spoken about it. The middle voice. The middle voice is when the doer of the verb is both the subject doing the verb, but also the object receiving the verb. For example, اغتسل, to wash oneself. In English, we say, I washed myself. If I just say I washed, you are asking me, well, what did you wash? I can't just say I washed, but I can say I washed myself. But in Arabic, you can just say اغتسلت, افتعل, افتعلت. The middle voice, so this is a bit confusing because we said voice pertains to the binya of the verb. Every verb is either active or passive. The idea of the middle voice is rather a form, and I appreciate this might confuse many people now. But now, if ta'ala, it can be active or it can be passive. It can be tu'ila. So the middle voice in Arabic can actually be middle active and middle passive. That makes sense. This is a point which I appreciate this is a subtlety. This is actually one of the rare instances where it is easier to learn a concept in Arabic grammar than it is to approach it having done English grammar, because there is no, this does not exist in English grammar or Western grammar. Yes, in Latin and Greek, you have a middle voice, but you certainly don't have an active middle and a passive middle voice, not really. This is uniquely Arabic. And to understand this, we're just going to have to experience it. But if ta'ala, this is where the fi'l, the fi'l is both being done and or the fa'il, the agent of this fi'l of ifti'al is both doing fi'l and receiving fi'l in one form or another. It's not as simple as just saying he washed himself, but it's very similar, and we will see this many, many times. In fact, I made one video called The Meaning of God Consciousness. That is an investigation into the meaning of taqwa, of ittiqa, to be muttaqi, godliness. This is the middle voice, or the middle form of the verb, rather. Comes from the verb wiqaya, waqa, which means to shield or to protect. Ittaqa is the middle voice of waqa. And I go on a journey in that video to explain the deep meaning of taqwa just from Arabic grammar alone. So I encourage people to go back and watch that. Similarly, we can form the passive. So you see that there's a passive voice and there's a passive form. You can say fu'ila, which means it was done, Or you can say in fa'ala it was done. A deep meaning again, very deep. Um, I'll give you one example. Kasara means to break. So kusira is the passive voice. It means it was broken. Right? Kasartu al-ka's. I broke the cup. Fal-ka'su kusirat. So the cup was broken. Or I can say al-ka'su in kasarat. What's the difference between saying kusirat and in kasarat? In kasara means for something to be broken in and of itself. I'm not saying that, I broke the cup, so the cup was broken. In kasara means you have a cup and boom, it just breaks. The cup of its own accord breaks. So a very small, subtle difference. But really, it pertains to the beauty of the Arabic language and how profound and how deep it actually is. But for now, you've got the basic form of the verb, you have a middle form, and you have a passive form. So that explains what's going on here. Then there's something called fa'ala, very common. For example, nazzala. Nazala means to descend. Nazzala means to make descend. But more than that, in fact, I'll ask you a question here. What do you think a meaning of fa'ala is going to be? If fa'ala just means to do, if I say fa'ala, listen very closely. Fa'ala, I'm doubling the verb. What do you think is happening to the meaning? So the idea, this verb always has some notion of stages. Nazzala, the nazzala, fa'ala. It's not just saying, boom, I brought it down. It's like unazziluhu. Do you guys see? Nazzala, nazzaltuhu. You can also say anzala, which again means to bring down. This is the difference. Ana anzaltuhu or ana nazzaltuhu. You see the difference there? So that's fa'ala, very common. Then we can have the middle form of fa'ala. What's happening here, going from fa'ala to ifta'ala, same thing going from fa'ala to tafa'ala. So you might notice that this ta over here, it's a very sneaky ta, is giving a meaning of middleness. Probably the hardest verb form to actually explain is fa'ala. It is a bit tricky and it's going to take you learning and seeing this quite a few times to begin to get a handle hold of what's going on. But let me give you two examples, three actually. So you have sawa yusawi. The form is fa'ala yufa'ilu. So you can kind of hear what's going on if you're going from fa'ala to fa'ala. But now we're going to fa'ala. So fa'ala was this. Fa'ala, it's kind of like this, if that makes any sense at all. Fa'ala, it's like I am doing the fi'l over some period of time. So one example is sawa, which means to be equal to something else, to be even or level with something else. Sawa yusawihi, yusawi. You also have khalafa. Khalafa means to be different to something. You khalafahu. Sawa khalafa. Shabaha. Shabaha means to be like something. Mathala, similarly. So there is something very deep about this form. The vast majority of meanings to do with being equal to, being different to, being in an interaction to something else in some way occur on this form, fa'ala. I promise another example, a slightly violent one. Qatala means to kill. Qatala means to fight. A fight to kill. So you see, it's like I'm applying the meaning of qatl over a period of time. And the middle form of this, we love the middle form, is tafa'ala. And tafa'ala is like one thing is fa'ala the other, and the other thing is also fa'ala this. So tafa'ala is a very beautiful form, actually. Many ideas of harmony and cohesion and symmetry occur on this form of tafa'ala, or of opposition and conflict and discord, is tafa'ul. Last two, I just did speak about af'ala, anzala. Very simple. Af'ala, like anzala, means to make do the fi'l. You have this meaning of the fi'l. Af'ala is to generate this meaning. It's as simple as that. And actually, I might have lied. I think this is the hardest form to understand. Istaf'ala. Istaf'ala is the middle form of af'ala. I mean, af'ala is not, it is fairly intuitive, I suppose, the idea of generating a verb, but you do need to see it in action a few times to really get a hang of this. Istaf'ala. What does it mean to have the middle form of generation? As if that thing is both generating the verb, but also being a beneficiary of the fact that it is generated or made done. One very, very common meaning which comes out of this is actually the meaning of seeking. Because let's take an example. Well, I mean, what one thing you might say is istansara, to seek help. Or let's give a nicer one, enlightenment, or to seek enlightenment. Istanara or istada'a. Ada'a means to give daw. Daw means light. Ada'a to give light. Similarly, anara, nur, light. Anara to give nur. Istanara is the middle voice of that. What does it mean to have the middle voice, the middle form of giving light? So here, the meaning is to seek light. Because you're doing something, you're initiating a chain of events, which will give forth light. I'm asking you, can I have some light, please? My asking you to give me light is going to cause you to actually give me light, but I am the one who's receiving the light. So I am both causing the light to be given and also receiving the effect of that. So that's istanara. I'll end both this example and perhaps this video with a very, very beautiful example of this meaning, which is istighfar. Istighfar. Ana astaghfiru Allah. And you cannot translate this because it's so much more than seeking, you see? I just gave you an entire story of istinara, of illumination, my seeking light, my quest to be illuminated, to be enlightened. That's istafala. So much more than just seeking. Istighfar, astaghfirullah. It's a quest to attain maghfirah. It's such a deep, profound meaning, so encompassing. Then that pertains to, well, what is maghfirah? Well, I should make a video on this, but maghfirah has many meanings. We say forgiveness, but what is forgiveness? What does it mean to forgive? And there are many words for forgiveness in the Arabic language, if we are going to say that. But maghfirah, has a meaning of covering up. I am asking to be covered up, has meaning of sealing up. I'm not just asking to be covered up, to be sealed up. Because sealing up is good in the right context. You complete it. And related to that is the meaning of wholeness. One example of this is like sealing up a skin of water. You have a water skin. This is more of an ancient example for the Arabs, but you might seal it up. And ghafara has that meaning. of tying, sealing up, covering up, so that you can preserve and protect the thing. So to preserve, like il-salah, the salah, the wholeness of the thing. So istighfar, this one form of the verb, is about the quest of being covered and nourished and healed by this, the forgiveness, the light, the mercy, the love of God. That's the meaning of istighfar, an incredibly beautiful meaning captured in but just one word of the Arabic language. Why and how? Because of the beauty of these verb forms, which many people have described as really the prized treasure of Arabic. This is the heart of Arabic. What makes Arabic special are these different forms of the verb. But I think that's a good place to end this, and we shall pick up next time speaking a bit more about conjugation.